Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, gamer boys and girls, welcome back to the pod. I hope everyone had a great holiday and is ready for the first humble choice of this year. I know we are. So buckle up and let's jump right into it.
In case you were looking for a space-based adventure game, you might have just found what you were looking for. In Between the Stars, you'll play the role of a captain of a military spaceship. There's an overarching intergalactic conflict going on, which serves as your main plotline, but also, in a build-your-own-adventure format, the galaxy is sprinkled with procedurally generated events and side hustles. Now, whether you care about any of these is mostly up to you. As far as my time with BTS, it felt as if I was allowed to spend as much time on them as I wanted to, without being urged to move on, but if I decided so, I could have just skipped them entirely. However, I do feel latter choice would be a mistake. If anything, these self-contained little snippets were the most fun aspect of the game for me. In practice, the way they work is you pick up a quest, point your spaceship in their direction and speed on over. Upon arrival, you'll either find yourself in a battle or an event, for example, what seems to be a wreckage of another ship. This will be introduced in text format, and you'll likely have to make a decision or two, altering the outcome slightly, sprinkle in a few dice rolls, and you'll reach a conclusion. There's not much more to it, but what I came across were interesting to read through, and the system certainly reminded me of FTL, Faster Than Light, and brought back some nice memories. Other half of the coin, or in this case game, is the previously mentioned space battling, real-time, three-dimensional dogfighting with lasers and rockets. Personally, I didn't care too much for that aspect. To be fair, I'm baseline not exactly excited by this genre, but it also didn't help that I found it tedious and repetitive rather than fun. There's a chance, later down the line, this will be different, once you maybe unlock a handful more special abilities and a variety of weapons, but at least in the beginning, you'll just keep positioning your shielded side towards the enemies, hold down left click to fire, and stop whenever you're about to overheat. It's not something that would draw me in, but to each their own. There's also a progression system in there. BTS claims it's RPG growth, which I'd say is quite generous, but you will indeed gain experience points that allow you to level up a few passive power-ups to somewhat tailor your experience. As far as presentation goes, that's certainly one of the game's strengths. The galaxy itself looks pretty, at least whenever you're not in an asteroid field that suffers heavily from popping. Ships also look great, and last but not least, bigger scale battles with the future tech weapons and explosions look great as well. As for sounds, while nothing outstandingly bad, there's just nothing memorable there either. Important to mention, before we leave, that Between the Stars is an early access title and has been in such state for a year and a half now. Developers originally claimed EA would last a year and some, but it clearly isn't ending anytime soon, so as always, buy with caution, if you feel the urge to do so.
You know you're old when they start to remaster and re-release games you played as a teen on Newgrounds during the heroic age of the internet. So the Henry Stickmin collection is just that, a remaster of an old Flash game. Does it make it bad? Well, no, not at all. Does it entertain as much as it did back in the day? Well, it depends on the person, but for me it wasn't as good as I remembered. Maybe I have matured. So Henry Stickmin is a series of Flash games created by Puffball United that got remastered in 2020. In these episodes, the player can choose the events and endings as they function by point-and-click format. The first 5 Henry Stickmin games originally released on the Stick page and Newgrounds. A new game completing the mission was developed specifically for the collection to serve as a final chapter to the story. The games follow the namesake character and series protagonist Henry Stickmin on his various but very dangerous adventures. First, starting off as a thief, he can later become an agent of the government, the leader of a notorious criminal syndicate, or remain neutral as a thief. As mentioned, the game is point and click, and the player can unfold every plot the game has to offer, and these are generally funny events, or flat out badass ones. But to be fair, some aged a bit poorly, at least for me. Each episode has multiple endings. They are stuffed with memes and pop cultural references, so it is a great trip down the memory lane. The only problem I had, that it crashed a couple of times, as I have run it in full screen. But to be fair, the game warns you not to do it, cause it may cause crashes. I'm sure it can be fixed, but for some reason it wasn't. So there isn't much to say about this one really. If you ever played this one on the internet and you're a fan of it, get this. If you want to have a laugh and you want to spend 1 to 3 hours with revealing weird and wacky endings and plots, get this. For me it was a great trip down memory lane. 2008 was a long time ago, huh? Damn.
I was bored of my ass this other day when it hit me. It might be time to go and check out that sweet piece of farm and land I inherited from my granddad. I was greeted by Oliver, who was looking after my property for some time.
Hello, I'm your neighbor. My name's Oliver. I've been looking after this farm since your grandfather passed away.
After some kind words and flexing in each other's face, we took a tour around the place, and you wouldn't believe what I saw. Everything, and I mean absolutely everything, was in disrepair. Mr. Hi, I'm Oliver, I've been looking after this place, showed me one by one how everything here is garbage and told me how I should be fixing them. Lucky me, I actually brought my favorite nail gun with me, so as soon as I got rid of that clown Oliver, I got started with my favorite pastime, waving different hand and power tools in the general direction of things until they magically become less shitty. Not good, just less shitty. I had such a jolly time that at some point I even hopped over to Jackass Oliver's place and waved my stuff over there as well before stealing his tractor. I spent the entire day doing this exact thing, nothing else, so as soon as the sun went down I was ready to hit the nightclubs. I put on my best shirt and mounted my bitchmobile. On the way to the city, I noticed I might be getting hungry, but quickly hushed that notion away. The only thing I'm eating tonight is that juicy put. You can imagine the look on my face when the place turned out to be completely empty, and even that stuck-up wretch behind the bar wanted nothing else from me than my money. I knew I couldn't give up, however, so I decided on my way home I'll head towards the neighboring female, Clara. Oh boy, was I not ready for what she had in store for me, that dirty little lynx. I spent the entire night plowing and cultivating her field deeper than anyone ever before. After a job well done, I headed home for a good night's sleep. God damn, this game is dog shit.
Midnight Protocol takes us to a hypothetical Budapest of 2062. At the command of an interface of a personal computer with many and various items that will come in handy throughout the story, and it's about using the keyboard, hacking, and to find out why we ended up in prison and who sent us there. The very first minute we will find ourselves in front of the screen, where we will be asked to enter a username and password. We just need to type random commands on the keyboard, so both fields are filled in automatically by the game itself, so that they can be launched immediately in the OS interface of our personal computer. Which is, to be fair, cool as fuck. Like in every movie where the hacker just smashes the keyboard and everything fills out itself, it's great. And this feature stays with us throughout the game. Following a brief introduction to the story and after small glimpses of what has happened in the past, the game leaves us to figure everything out. We will have to rely solely on the keyboard commands, no mouse or any pointer will be allowed, to navigate in the home of our OS, as well as being able to carry out every activity and access every item during the continuation of the story. In Midnight Protocol, you must follow the narrative. The game pulls you in and lets you to be carried away by its story, by the secrets it hides. And as the story progresses, you can make choices, but be prepared to face the end results later in the game. The game is essentially a puzzle and a turn-based tactic game. Every dynamic, puzzle and test is disguised as a security system, which we will find ourselves hacking to access the servers and their data. They won't make it easy for us as we progress with the adventure. From a technical point of view, Midnight Protocol did not surprise. I found the idea of the game itself and the interface of the computer curious and interesting, but decidedly bare in terms of graphics. It's a game that highlights the story by focusing firmly on it and the way in which it is represented and revealed throughout the entire adventure. This makes it clear from the beginning, however, it is fun to hack the servers, to deal with the increasingly complex security systems and their dynamism. So overall, the game has captivating puzzles that put the player to the test in increasingly complex challenges, a story to be discovered with small doses that we have to earn only by progressing with the game, and a choice system that is on the lighter side. So if you are comfortable to use your keyboard, and only your keyboard, and you like puzzles, get this one.
Iron Harvest offers a real-time strategy title in an alternative, post-World War period focused around the eastern front of Europe. Except instead of Russia and Poland, we have Rasviets and Polanians. Instead of tanks, we have mechs. And most importantly, we have a motherfucking battle bear. As far as gameplay goes, rather than the Warcraft or Age of Empires style base building, army commanding RTS, we're talking the cover-based and rock-paper-scissors weapon system style of per se the Dawn of War series. You control a more limited number of troop squads, your resource generation is done via capturing node points on the map, and you're expected to focus more on the flanking and countering aspects of combat. I will say that whilst I enjoyed playing through the maps and defeating enemies, the game did feel a bit fast, and more often than not I found myself just attacking and only using cover when it was conveniently in my way. I assume this is a result of attempting to make the game co-op and multiplayer versus ready, but this doesn't change how I kept wishing the single player campaign was slower, maybe even with a pause function so I could set up my forces in actually strategical formations. What I really adored about this title, however, was how the tutorial, instead of being just presented through dumbed down combat scenarios, was presented via a snowball battle from the main protagonist's childhood. Another aspect I can only speak of highly is the production quality. Not only does the game itself look good while playing, but the cutscenes are straight up outstanding, and a single toggle that set the characters' in-game audio to their native language, with English subs, also made a massive difference as far as immersion goes. If you're itching for a classical feeling strategy title, or just want to get a glimpse of how Company of Heroes would have played with mechs and battle animals included, I don't really see any reason why you shouldn't give Iron Harvest a shot. It definitely seems to deliver.
Project Winter is an 8-person multiplayer game focusing on social deception and survival, a la Among Us. Collaboration and communication are essential in each game, as the survivor team has to restore the systems and neutralize the enemy, and the traitor team has to hinder the survivors or kill them. From here, Project Winter moves one step forward and adds management elements, crafting and a strong survival component, in a mix perhaps not very original to be refined in terms of balance, but still fun and well packaged. There are 3 game modes in Project Winter: Basic, Normal and Blackout, the latter available only via paid DLC. In basic games there are up to a maximum 6 players among the survivors and 2 among the traitors. The first will have to juggle natural deceptions and bad weather in order to restore the functioning of two infrastructures useful for calling for help and getting to safety. The traitors, of course, have the goal of preventing escape by camouflaging themselves in the group and hitting the enemy at the right moment to neutralize it. Communication is a determining factor in the match, and the title provides a voice chat with proximity operation, which allows the exchange only with nearby players. The recovery of electronic components and crafting will make it possible to find or make a walkie-talkie, with which one can open a real remote communication channel, in addition to the possibility of intercepting those among other players. Base is the most suitable mode to take the first steps in, since the matches are simplified, the maps are small, and the time available to reach the objective is less, with consequent streamlining of the games. In normal, on the other hand, things get a little more complicated, since, in addition to the greater density of content and a larger area to explore, specific figures also come into play that shuffle the cards in terms of balance. In fact, in the lobby there will no longer be the simplistic subdivision into 6 survivors and 2 traitors, but a host of more specific and diversified figures. It starts with an innocent, the equivalent of the survivor in the base, and a traitor, to which however are added 2 doctors able to give support to the dying comrades, 2 hackers able to spend their skills to easily unlock a precious bunker full of resources, and 2 scientists who can bring the player back to life through the use of a special structure to reach on the map. After joining a lobby, we are catapulted into the cabin. This location is the nerve center of every match, as well as the lifeline against the pitfalls of the winter. Inside we can craft objects using the materials found, cook the ingredients to create useful tools for health or warm-up, as exposure to cold can result in death, and it is in fact measured by a bar that requires the player to plan their movements with a minimum of care. As a good survival game, Project Winter also puts us in front of other aspects to take into account, such as hunger. Among trees, rocks and buildings from which to extrapolate precious resources, we find berry brambles, indispensable sources of sustenance. Among the glacial snows then, we will be able to come across indomitable beasts that will not hesitate to attack us, but in return, if we kill them, we can cook them. As long as we play with knowledge of the facts, coordinating and communicating properly with fellow players, or even better with some friends, the game formula is fun and works very well. But when it comes to joining to random lobbies just to find a match as a solo player, well, it is a painful experience. I got kicked out a ton of times, and sadly the servers are pretty empty at times, at least for the Europe region, even during the evenings. Project Winter is a fun, well thought out and a pleasant survival/cooperative game, also from an aesthetic point of view. The playful formula is evidently fished out with the intent of riding the Among Us phenomenon, and the hope is probably to be able to reproduce even only part of the success. When I could play, I had a ton of fun with random people and I always got killed, so that was fun. Should you give it a chance? Yeah, I guess you should.
For those who weren't around back in those days when the original was released, Mafia was, in my opinion, a less hyped but much more enjoyable competitor to the GTA series. Okay, well, maybe not if we talk about the entire series of Mafia and the entire series of GTA, as Mafia pretty much fell flat on its face starting with Mafia 2, but the first part, in my eyes, was a competitor to GTA 3 specifically, and for me it clearly won that matchup. This title takes place in the 1930s USA, within the fictional city of Lost Heaven, where you follow the story of Tommy Angelo, cab driver turned gigantic balls mafia dude. This is mostly delivered in a third-person shooter format, which leads us on to the first issue that would be hard not to mention. If you want it to be nice, you'd probably say the cover-based shooter experience of the early 2000s didn't age well, but if you just wanted to be honest, the whole mechanic was garbage since the get-go, which kind of excludes aging well in and of itself. In other words, if you're looking for an amazing shooter experience, that'll have to be found somewhere else. In a similar vein, Mafia also doesn't stand up to the open world titles of nowadays that provide things to do through hubs that litter the whole gameplay area. To be fair, I personally also feel that's garbage gameplay content, so from my perspective, no loss there. It still raises the question, however, if the shooting part sucks, and we can't waste our lives looking for meaningless collectibles and farming outposts, is there any reason whatsoever to not just ignore this title? Great question as always, thanks for asking. And the answer? Yes. First of all, lesser reason of the two is presentation. This release isn't just a high-definition reskin of a 20-year-old game, it was actually rebuilt from ground zero, and it shows big time. While things have clearly changed, even the main characters look and sound somewhat different, it just takes a little getting used to for those that have already played the original release. Weather effects look great, lighting is smooth, and for some additional fun factor, you can just pop on a noir filter anytime you feel like so. I only came across a single issue in this regard. At one point the game just decided to drop down to 12 FPS for seemingly no reason, but quickly tabbing out and back in solved it no problem, so there's no reason for panic. Main reason, however, to opt into Mafia is its outstanding story. It's the quality of watching one of the classic Mafia movie series, let's say Godfather for example. You'll get to live through how Tommy saved the life of two high-ranking members of Don Salieri's Mafia mob, winning a golden ticket to an opportunity to rise up the ranks. I don't want to say anything else about it. If you haven't experienced it yet, you really should do yourself a favor. And this is pretty much my final verdict as well. If you haven't yet experienced Mafia, you should definitely do so. If you've been around back then and have played it, well, maybe a fancy new coat is reason enough for you to also give it another go.
Ah yes, the good old early access bundle filler game as per usual. Well, Retrowave is a very casual driving game, ideal for retro lovers, neon lights, synthwave music, etc. It's a game with no other goal than to relax and enjoy endless roads in this idealized futuristic version of the 80s and drive as far as you can or want. And yeah, that's about it. I could end the video right fucking here, but I've spent hours of my life on this, so because of that, you get to hear a proper review. This game is infuriating and great at the same time. Why? Well, let me break it down for you. The game's music is awesome, truly great, but since they are permanently on shuffle, you'll get tired of the same 10 songs before you get to hear even half of what's available in the game. You can choose from 20 cars in this game that you can unlock, but 80% of them have the same stats, so really only the looks of them change. There are 4 game modes: one-way, two-way, pretty self-explanatory, speed bomb, you're controlling a giant lorry that will explode if you slow down, and time attack. The round ends after 100 seconds. So the the speed bomb is boring as fuck. The time attack doesn't make any fucking sense, as the game is all about going as far as possible. The maps are fantastic, and I really mean they generally looking pretty fucking good. But after a while you realize that at least the quarter of them are unplayable due to blinding effects and excessively blinking visuals. So yeah, Retrowave for me fails as a game, but excels as a relaxation tool. As if I will have 50 minutes to kill before I need to leave home and just wanna relax and play something, Retrowave will come in handy. But yeah, that's about it. It's a mix. It's up to you.
Following in the footsteps of Mafia Definitive Edition, Rustler also comes in this month to present an alternative for all the GTA fans out there. Unlike the modern, third-person formula that we're used to since GTA 3, however, Rustler reaches back even further to the top-down era of the start of the series, while also introducing one major twist through placing the game in a medieval setting. Other than that, however, it doesn't really hold back on mimicking. From the intro cinematic to gameplay, it resonates with whatever GTA 1 and 2 had going on. I'll leave that up to everyone to judge whether that's to be considered paying homage or just blatant rip-off. The developers themselves call it paying tribute. You'll be either completing GTA-style missions, or just messing around in a purposely inaccurate medieval setting, filled to the brim with pop cultural references. As for the missions, they're fairly okay. You follow the GTA arrows to the GTA mission nodes, where you're told to go kill someone, rob someone, or something else in a similar vein, over a minute or two long sessions each. What I have not yet come across interestingly is the reputation system from those games. Back in the old GTA titles, whenever you did something for, let's say, the Yakuza, you would gain favor with them, but in exchange become more disliked by, let's say, the Zaibatsu. Over here, the quest givers so far were just random NPCs who couldn't care less about the other quest givers. Anyhow, once you've had your fill with GTA missions, you can go out for GTA side hustles by stealing an ambulance or a police horse, for example. I personally hate annoying mumble speech in games, and unfortunately there's plenty of that here, but other than that, sound work is generally okay, some of the music is quite enjoyable even. Visuals are also pleasant to look at, with my only complaint in this regard being how easy it is to just ride into tree stumps, as they are a bit hard to notice. Rustler is one of those turn your brain off and just do something type of games. While the core gameplay is kind of bland, and the humor will definitely be hit and miss, I have to admit, just as I'm having a hard time trying to find anything outstanding about it, I'm also struggling to pinpoint anything that's really bad here. It has a slight taste of a joke, maybe gone too far, but I guess I'd rather have more options on the market than less.
RoboCops is a spin-off game from This Is the Police, which is exclusively focuses on the series' turn-based tactical operations. The player will lead a ragtag squad of cops in rebellion against the town's new criminal power. So let's start with the plot. For me, it was definitely on the dry side of things. The player will be called to take on the role of a handful courageous former policemen, fed up with all the rottenness that lies in their department, and well, that's about it. The game plays out in a town called Ripton in 1994. Freedom and legality are only a distant memory. Businesses, politics and all activities are under the iron control of the boss of the local evil, a certain Victor Zuev, who, having hired an army of henchmen, exercises his infamous power over all honest citizens. With the corrupt police and politicians on the criminals' payroll, all that remains is to return your gun and badge and restate the order. As was to be expected, Rebel Cops resumes and expands the tactical phases already seen in the two titles of the parent series, focusing on increasing the variables and on certain increase in the level of difficulty to ensure that those who only like the tactics part of the previous games can come back. The result is fluctuating, however. The rules are simple. No policeman differs significantly from others without specific classes or abilities. And bullets have the same effect on both the good and the bad. One is enough to put one's autobiography in the history section. So this is enough to prefer a stealth approach to the various missions proposed. And sadly, the game won't incentivize the loud approach at all. If anything, it punishes it. Developing strategies that lead to handcuffing enemies instead of making a massacre brings benefits even between missions, because the Ripton Citizens Committee, fed up with too much violence, perpetrated by Zuev, will be more inclined to pay a larger sum for the purchase of new equipment if we are the good guys. On the contrary, setting fire to the powders and making each mission a remake of High Noon will lead not only the inevitable death of our men, but also significant shrinkage of the funds with which to navigate. This makes the game quite hard, and the levels will get increasingly harder as the game goes on, but there are some elements to the game that will ease our suffering, such as the AI. Evidently, the enemy artificial intelligence is also deficient, incapable of any complex tactics, to get out of the closed rooms and even to find the source of the noise, making life often easy for the ex-policeman. Overall, the title has not been able to offer only positive aspects. It is clear that the linearity of the missions and the lack of major insights in the management phase makes Rebel Cops lose some points. But it is ideal for those who have been always intrigued by the genre but have kept away from it because of the micromanagement of the units. So if you are new to the turn-based strategy genre and looking for a discrete title, Rebel Cops could be for you. Thanks to the original art direction and the good implementation of stealth, it is a solid choice.
Welcome back, and Happy New Year to all of you. Except if you're Chinese. No worries though, you'll also join us in 2022, riding a tiger nonetheless, within less than a month. Riding the number of games roller coaster, we're once again down to 10 this month, but in return, we do have quite the noteworthy headliner in Mafia Definitive Edition, and Iron Harvest wasn't exactly an unwanted child either. Without going into details right now, I'll quickly note that we'll be making some changes to our scoring system, likely starting with next month already. Stay tuned, and more on that on arrival. As for the first performance of 2022, the headliners came in big and blew the competition out of the water, setting an example for what level of quality we want to see moving forward. On the other end of the spectrum, while it delivers on the 80s vibe, sadly not much else. Retrowave fell flat, and so did Farmer's Dynasty, which is just a hard pill to swallow unless you're under the influence. Every other contestant, however, delivered in at least one form or another. While they didn't exactly impress as much as to be called outstanding, they're still at least okay titles. This scores us a total 20 points out of the maximum 30, with a monthly performance of 66%, we're just a single percentile behind the yearly average of 2021. Well, here's hoping we'll only be moving up from here. As always, we'd be very grateful if you please the machine gods by liking our video. If you'd like to come along for next month's ride, don't hesitate to subscribe. Any and all recommendations are welcome in the comment section. I hope you're all recovering well from your New Year's Eve blackouts, and we'll see you again next month.